Bogomilism arose in the First Bulgarian Empire around 927 AD during the reign of Tsar Peter I. It was founded by a priest named Bogomil, whose name, meaning dear to God in Slavic, reflected his spiritual aspirations. The movement began in the region of Kutmichevitsa, which is now a part of North Macedonia, amid social unrest and dissatisfaction with the newly established Bulgarian Orthodox Church. The 10th century was a time of hardship for Bulgarian peasants, marked by heavy taxation, feudal oppression, and ecclesiastical corruption. Bogomil's teachings offered a spiritual rebellion, blending Christian ideas with dualistic traditions from earlier sects like the Paulicians. The Paulicians had been resettled in the Balkans by Byzantine authorities. This fusion gave Bogomilism its distinctive theology, appealing to those disillusioned with worldly power. The earliest record of Bogomilism comes from a letter by Patriarch Theophylact of Constantinople to Tsar Peter, warning of a heresy mixing Paulicianism and Manichaeism. By the 970s, the priest Cosmas documented its spread in his treatise against the Bogomils, describing it as a threat to Orthodox faith, particularly among rural clergy and peasants. Bogomilism's theology was rooted in dualism. It's the belief that spiritual and material worlds are governed by opposing forces. And initially, Bogomils taught a moderate dualism, asserting that God created the spiritual realm and souls, while Satan, his elder son, Sataniel, created the material world and human bodies. Over time, some groups adopted absolute dualism, viewing God and Satan as eternal, equal adversaries, similar to later Cathar beliefs. They saw the material world as inherently evil, a prison for divine souls trapped by Sataniel. Jesus was sent by God to reveal truth and liberate souls, though not through physical sacrifice, but as a spiritual guide. Bogomils rejected the incarnation, believing Jesus only appeared human, a view called Doceticism. They denied his bodily resurrection, emphasizing spiritual salvation over physical redemption. Bogomils accepted parts of the New Testament, especially the four Gospels, Paul's epistles, and John's writings, but rejected the Old Testament except for Psalms and some prophets, which they reinterpreted. They believed Sataniel's rebellion against God caused humanity's fall, and salvation came through rejecting the material world and embracing ascetic purity. Bogomil communities were organized around a strict moral code, reflecting their dualistic worldview. They divided members into the perfect, who lived ascetically, abstaining from marriage, meat, wine, and possessions, and the faithful, who could live ordinary lives but follow the perfect's teachings. The perfect served as spiritual leaders elected as apostles in groups of 12 with women eligible, which was a radical departure from Orthodox norms. They rejected Orthodox sacraments like baptism and the Eucharist, viewing them as material corruptions. Instead, they practiced spiritual baptism on deathbeds for the faithful, symbolizing liberation from the body. Worship was simple. It was held in homes and not in churches, with prayers like the Lord's Prayer replacing rituals. And they also opposed icons, relics, and the cross, seeing it as an instrument of Jesus' death. Bogomils were known as missionaries, and they traveled as mendicant preachers to spread their doctrines. They healed the sick and exorcised spirits, gaining followers among the poor. Their asceticism, though criticized as hypocritical by opponents like Cosmas, was widely admired even by those who condemned their theology. Bogomilism stood in stark contrast to Orthodox Christianity, which upheld the material world as God's creation, Jesus' incarnation, and the Church's authority. The Orthodox taught that God alone created all things, spiritual and physical, and that Jesus was fully human and divine, redeeming humanity through his death and resurrection. Bogomils rejected this. They accused the Church of serving Sataniel by embracing wealth and power. They saw the Orthodox hierarchy, priests, bishops, and patriarchs, as corrupt agents of the material world, unfit to mediate salvation. This defiance of ecclesiastical and secular authority made Bogomilism both a religious and social revolt, appealing to peasants and marginalized groups. Their rejection of the cross, saints, and church structures challenged Orthodox worship, while their dualism undermined doctrines like the Trinity, which they saw as an illusion. These differences fueled accusations of heresy, as the Church sought to maintain doctrinal unity in a fragmented empire. From Bulgaria, Bogomilism spread rapidly across the Balkans, reaching Serbia, Bosnia, and the Byzantine Empire by the 11th century. In Constantinople, around 1100, their leader Basil the physician was publicly burned at the stake, signaling intense opposition. Despite persecution, the movement grew, influencing regions as far as Kievan Rus, Italy, and France. In the 12th century, Serbian ruler Stefan Nemanja convened a council to suppress Bogomils, while in Bosnia, some historians link them to the Bosnian Church, though this is debated. By the 13th century, Bogomilism connected with Western dualist groups like the Cathars, forming a network from the Black Sea to the Atlantic, as noted by medieval sources. The Orthodox Church and Bulgarian authorities held councils to condemn Bogomilism, imprisoning or exiling followers. Crusades and inquisitions, especially in Bosnia, targeted heretics, but the movement persisted until the Ottoman conquest in the 15th century, when many Bogomils reportedly converted to Islam, leaving traces in Balkan folklore. Bogomilism was more than a religious movement, it was a social critique. By preaching social inequality, Bogomils echoed early Christian communal ideals, condemning feudal lords and clergy for exploiting the poor. Their belief that the material world was Sataniel's domain justified rejecting secular authority, aligning with later anarchist ideas. This stance attracted peasants and rural clergy who saw Bogomilism as a way to resist oppression. In Bulgaria, it challenged Tsar Peter's alliance with the church, while in Byzantium it alarmed emperors fearing rebellion. The movement's emphasis on simplicity and equality fostered tight-knit communities, resilient despite persecution. However, Orthodox churches like, I don't know how to say this word, Euthemias Zigabenus, accused Bogomils of hypocrisy, claiming their humility masked subversive intent. This tension highlights Bogomilism's dual role as a spiritual and socio-political force shaping medieval dissent. Bogomils produced a rich body of literature, much of it apocryphal, to spread their teachings. They edited texts like the historiated Bible and Letter from Heaven, adapting biblical narratives to reflect dualistic themes of creation, sin, and redemption. Works like 2 Enoch and the Vision of Isaiah were popular, emphasizing spiritual struggle. That's the number 2 Enoch. Their dialogues, called Lucidaria, presented complex ideas, simply making theology accessible to laypeople. These writings influenced Balkan oral traditions and religious poetry such as Kaleki Parahogia, spreading Bogomil ideas eastward to Kievan Rus and westward to Cathar communities. It may be Kiev and Rus. Though much was destroyed by Orthodox authorities, Bogomil literature seeded a vibrant folk culture, blending Christian and dualistic motifs. Their legacy persists in Slavic legends of heaven, hell, and the soul's journey, reflecting their enduring cultural impact. The Orthodox Church branded Bogomilism as a heresy for its rejection to core doctrines, the Incarnation, sacraments, and church authority, and by the 13th century, councils in Bulgaria and Byzantium declared it a threat to Christian unity, linking it to earlier Gnostic sects like Manichaeism and Paulicianism. Persecution was severe. In Bulgaria, Tsar Boril's 1211 synod exiled Bogomils, while Byzantine emperors executed leaders to deter followers. The label heretic was partially political, as Bogomilism's anti-authoritarian stance challenged state-backed orthodoxy, especially as the church solidified its role in the empire. Yet, the heresy label obscures Bogomilism's appeal. Its focus on spiritual purity and resistance to corruption resonated with those alienated by institutional power, revealing tensions within medieval Christianity. Bogomilism's influence extended beyond its decline in the 15th century. It directly inspired the Cathars in southern France, whose dualistic beliefs mirrored Bogomil teachings. A 12th century source even mentions a pope of the Albigenses linked to Bulgaria, suggesting missionary connections. In the Balkans, Bogomilism shaped the Bosnian church, though modern scholars debate its dualistic nature. Its anti-clericalism echoed in later movements like the Waldensians and Hussites, who prioritized scripture and simplicity. The Reformation's critique of church wealth owes a debt to such medieval dissent. Today, Bogomilism survives in folklore, with tombstones in Bosnia bearing dualistic symbols like the solar cross. Its emphasis on individual salvation and resistance to authority resonates in modern spiritual movements, underscoring its role in shaping religious freedom. Bogomilism challenged medieval Christianity with its dualistic vision of a world divided between God and Sataniel, offering a radical alternative to Orthodox faith. From its Bulgarian roots, it spread across Europe, leaving a legacy of dissent and spiritual inquiry. Don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest topics in the comments. All right, take care.